Hey everybody, this is Wesley again with CIB, Central Intelligence Bros. Just coming back at you with another UFO story. I am going to go over the Travis Walton abduction. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. So, it's November 5th, 1975. Deep in the mountains of northeastern Arizona, inside the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest, a group of loggers were finishing a long day of work. Within minutes, something would happen that would become one of the most famous UFO encounters in modern history. A glowing craft in the woods, a beam of light striking a man, a disappearance lasting 5 days, and a witness who would later claim he had been taken aboard an alien spacecraft. Tonight, we're diving deep into the Travis Walton case, one of the most investigated UFO incidents ever recorded. Travis Walton was a 22-year-old logger from Snowflake, Arizona. He worked with a logging contractor named Mike Rogers. The crew included Mike Rogers, Travis Walton, Steve Pierce, Alan Dalis, John Goulet, Jerry Odom, and Dwayne Smith. These men spent weeks together deep in the forest cutting timber for a U.S. Forest Service contract. Logging work in the mountains was brutal. Chainsaws, heavy equipment, and long hours in rough terrain. By early November 1975, they were running behind schedule and working late trying to meet their deadline. On the evening of November 5th, the crew finished work after sunset. They climbed into Mike Rogers' pickup truck and started driving down a narrow dirt road through thick pine forest. The only light came from the truck's headlights. Then suddenly someone noticed a strange glow through the trees ahead. At first, the men thought it might be a fire or another vehicle, but as they approached the clearing, they realized the light was hovering above the ground. When the truck reached the clearing, the men saw the object clearly. Hovering roughly 20 feet above the ground was a metallic disc-shaped craft, about 15 to 20 feet across. It emitted a bluish white glow that illuminated the surrounding trees. The craft made a faint humming vibration. The crew stared in disbelief. Some shouted for Mike Rogers to keep driving, but before anyone could stop him, Travis Walton opened the door and stepped out. Walton later said curiosity pulled him toward the craft. He walked across the clearing while the others shouted for him to come back. Suddenly, the humming sound grew louder. Then a brilliant blue-green beam of light shot down from the craft and struck Walton. According to the witnesses, the force lifted Walton off his feet and threw him violently backward through the air. His body hit the ground and lay motionless. Inside the truck, panic erupted. The men believed their friend had just been killed. Mike Rogers slammed the truck into gear and sped away from the clearing. But only seconds later, the shock wore off. They had left Travis behind. Rogers turned the truck around and drove back. When they returned, the craft was gone, and Travis Walton was gone too. The crew jumped out and searched the area. They shouted Walton's name again and again, but there was no response. There was nobody and no sign of the craft. Terrified, the men drove into town and reported Walton missing. Police immediately became suspicious. 6 men arriving with a story about a UFO and a missing coworker sounded impossible. Investigators initially suspected murder. The witnesses were separated and questioned for hours. Investigators looked for inconsistencies, but the stories matched. Each man described the same glowing craft, the same beam of light, and the same moment. Walton was thrown backward. Despite this, the authorities organized massive search efforts across the forest. Helicopters scanned the mountain while ground crews combed miles of wilderness. Tracking dogs were also used, but there was no sign of Travis Walton. Investigators asked the witnesses to take polygraph tests. Several members of the crew agreed. They were asked direct questions. Did they harm Travis Walton? Did they invent the UFO story? Were they telling the truth? Most of the men passed the polygraph exams. Although polygraphs are not perfect, the results made it much harder for investigators to argue the crew had murdered Walton. 5 days later, the case took a shocking turn. On November 10th, Travis Walton suddenly reappeared. He was found near a phone booth in Heber, Arizona, about 30 miles from the original encounter site. Walton appeared weak, dehydrated, and disoriented. He had lost weight and seemed confused about what had happened. Eventually, Walton described walking up inside a strange metallic room. He said he was lying on a table surrounded by small humanoid beings with large bald heads and dark eyes. Panicking, Walton said he fought one of the beings and escaped from the table. He ran through a hallway inside the craft, describing smooth metallic walls and dim lighting. During his escape, he encountered human-looking figures wearing helmets and orange suits. According to Walton, these figures guided him into another room where chairs were arranged in a circular pattern. One of the figures placed a transparent mask over his face. Walton then lost consciousness. The next thing he remembered was waking up beside the road near where the encounter originally occurred. The story quickly exploded into national media coverage. Walton later wrote a book called The Walton Experience, which inspired the 1993 film Fire in the Sky. The film introduced the story to millions of people around the world. The Walton later said parts of the movie exaggerated his experience. Skeptics have proposed several explanations. Some believe the incident was an elaborate hoax created by the logging crew. Others believe Walton may have experienced a hallucination or psychological episode. Critics also point out that polygraph tests are not perfect evidence. Despite the skepticism, the witnesses have maintained their story consistently for decades. Nearly 50 years later, the Travis Walton case remains one of the most famous UFO encounters ever recorded. Whether the story represents an extraterrestrial encounter, a misunderstood natural phenomenon, or an elaborate hoax, the mystery continues to fascinate investigators and the public alike. This has been Wesley with Central Intelligence Bros. Until next time, stay curious, keep questioning everything.